we are moving from an era of information into an era of networks. And as I talk about networks, it's who you know, right? And I think you also alluded to that. But what role does technology play with that era of networks and technologies that we are going off? And I'm going off a bit script. It's not the questions that you got, but just an opening one, Kayembe, just to continue that discussion.
I think firstly, I need to avoid Kalkran on my next visit because the citizens there are going to talk a lot about me. But one of the examples that I alluded to with technology enabling networks is LinkedIn. I've got 3,600 connections and I don't know most of their names, to be honest with you. But really what it does is it provides that networking access without having the physical component to it. Whether it's informing people of the event that you're taking place, whether it's sharing what has happened, whether it's showing your progress or actually applying or looking for work. If you translate that to the physical world, these are all activities that we do at networking events. So what LinkedIn has done is it's enabled a networking capability to be on 24/7 if used correctly. And I'm a big advocate of LinkedIn because I've reaped some of the benefits and I've seen how it's helped people. And I think that's really one example. And one example, the other example that people oversee is social media. Right? Now, I got stuck at Instagram and Facebook, and I've never really jumped into the TikTok world. But what you see, if you were to take the word of networking and remove the professionalism from it, people are engaging in a network of communities, whether it's be dancing about something or, making a joke or something that's happened. That in itself is creating a network of people that are aligned to a specific topic. So those are just two ways of looking at it from a professional perspective, but also from a social perspective, how technology has enabled us to network without the physical presence of being together.
Awesome. Thank you, Kayembe. So I think just the question to everybody, and maybe we start with Vivette. I see nowadays we have some titles, right? And we're so innovative about our titles. So just as a little bit of an icebreaker across us all, if you could create your own job title, what would that be and why?
Actually, LinkedIn, by the way, yes. Listen to the man, please. The only reason I'm on the stage is because of LinkedIn. So I used to call myself a digital anthropologist, and nobody knew what that was, and that's why I changed it. But anthropology is the study of mankind, and you can break that down into all sorts of things. And when you're looking at social networks, as Kayembe has so nicely talked to us about, it is fascinating to see the social structures form, the language form, the modes of behavior form, who becomes an expert in that community. It's like watching this microcosm just flourish right in front of you. And so if I had to get a title that, people would understand, it would be a digital anthropologist.
Thank you so much. Interesting. And now we have a sense of who Vivette is. Anton?
Yeah, no, I think a problem solver, a professional problem solver. Because being an engineer and being in the tech space, ultimately what we do is solve problems. Yeah, it's not always that we are the entrepreneurs, but I like to say we turn the dreams into reality. We're like Disney. So, and that I think we always have to look at as much as there's the entrepreneurship, there's also the things that happen in the background. The support services and the faces that you don't see or we choose not to be seen. So that for me is problem solver.
Thank you so much, problem solver.
She's experienced designer.
Say that again?
Experienced designer.
It's not going to be 45 minutes, right?
No, it's not going to be 45 minutes. Apology. Okay. So, we all know user experience, right? And for a lot of people in our industry, user experience only speaks to the digital front-end capability that they're building. But when we're building user experiences, we have to look at it through the lenses of not only digital, but physical and physical as well. So an experience, for example, with a shopping cart where you buy online and deliver is a physical experience because it bridges both. So I like to see myself as someone who not only understands the digital side of user experience, but how does it connect to the real world to create that ecosystem? Hence, experience designer.
You just got an ace in, hey? Nrupesh?
Okay, before I go into that, again, LinkedIn. I have been on it since 2007. That's 17 years. That's the time it opened, the month it opened. And I've been in social media strategies, social media marketing since before that. One thing I always tell people is social media marketing or social media network. You need to be social. You need to know how to communicate digitally or in person. You need to know how media works because each social media network is different. And networking. Nothing will happen in this life without networking. And the one thing I always tell the youth when I talk to the youth is don't use the network for yourself. Use the network to grow the network, and it will help you. But don't be in it to be in the middle of the network. You're part of a wider network. People you have to set up that trust to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to call Vivette. Vivette, talk to this person. He might help you. Done. That's it. That's your role. You're growing the network. Don't follow up on it. And speaking of title, tech disruptor. Obviously, it's what I do. And with tech, it's such a wide field. And one thing I've realized, especially growing up in India and China, is they don't say I'm specialized. I'm in tech. And you should be easy to adapt to a new tech. Immediately use your mind to say, okay, you know what, this tech I know is out there. Let's learn. Let's connect dots. Here we have this issue of, no, I am in programming. I am in designing. I am in AI. Instead of cyber, like people ask me, why are you in cybersecurity? I'm like, I've been hacking since I was a kid. That does make me an expert because I've done it. But that's also tech. One tech is linked to the other. And we need to start using that word more tech than specialized fields in tech. So yeah.
Awesome. So we have anthropologist, problem solver, experience, designer, and tech disruptor. So we'll stick with you, Nrupesh. I think with you, it's also a social network butterfly type of thing, right? I think there we also soared. But I think just to keep with you, Nrupesh, your work is very closely with early stage startups, right? What is the biggest digital challenge they face that you've experienced, especially from a Namibian context, particularly those operating outside of Windhoek? So not so much Windhoek-centric. What have you experienced? What is that? What don't they have? What do they lack? What are those startup instruments that we need to also scale, just not focusing on Windhoek in those rural areas?
So quite a lot. One thing we mistake startups for is when I say startup to someone, they automatically assume it has to be tech related. It's that mindset. Oh, it's a startup, it must be tech related. You don't need to be tech enabled startup, but every startup needs to have digital tools to grow, if that makes sense. So one thing I've realized is all these entrepreneurs and startups in rural areas, one of the examples was 2 months ago, I was in Sumeb talking to 50-something entrepreneurs for One Economy. It was on AI in fintech. I had prepared this whole presentation, everything on AI, tools, everything. First thing I asked them, these are young, brilliant startup entrepreneurs. First thing I asked them, how many of you here know AI? 5 people. Now suddenly my whole presentation is out because they don't even know what AI is. They didn't know what ChatGPT was. And these are guys who are starting their own business. One wanted to do an online shop, but they just don't have the basic know-how, the basic tools, basic marketing skills, basic how to register a domain name for cheap. People try to sell them these expensive domains instead of going online and getting it for $200 for a year. Somebody needs to tell them these things. You can get hosting for $1 a month with emails. We need to enable those basic skills in startups. And this is where we lag behind where compared to other countries is they have these things. They know these things because it's easily available. It's accessible to everyone. And this is the information that we need to now collectively, through SUN and other initiatives, to say, okay, this is here, just go online, give that information for free. And we don't do that enough. So, yeah.
I think it goes back to meaningful technologies, right? I think it's a you just have we coined something here, or you coined something here tonight. So I think just going back to Kayembe, now that we know that this is obviously an issue, not everybody knows what AI is. What is the role of telcos like MTC in fostering the next generation of tech entrepreneurs and digital innovators in Namibia?
I think there's a multitude of lenses that you can look at it through. And my colleague on the panel here has really alluded to one important factor is enabling access to that information, right? So we know you can host for $200-300 a year. We know that there's marketing tools out there that can help you create a digital marketing strategy, which a lot of people don't have access to. So one of the roles that we could play is a knowledge hub to say, if you are starting an MSME, hey, this is the paper that you need. This is the level that you need to understand. This is where you can go for the cheapest hosting in Namibia at the moment. That is someone sitting there for 2 or 3 days and leveraging ChatGTP and Mother Google to really put that information together and get it out there. And it doesn't have to be a high-tech solution. It could be SMS this number, and guess what? We'll send you a link to a website, or every day we'll send you something based on where your company is, right? Where's your company? Stage 1. These are the things you need to follow. So there's really easy ways of putting that information together, one, and then distributing it as well on the current technologies is the first thing. I think the second lens that you look through it is more of active participation. And companies like MTC want to do this, and I'm privy to conversations where they actually want to do it. But there are barriers, right? For us, for example, to import cheap 4G-enabled phones, like I mentioned, there's the import tax, there's the VAT, there's all of these other things that come on top of that, where the price could be significantly reduced if we were to import those items for people so they could have access to those capabilities. And then I guess to continue doing what we're doing very well, actually, and to make sure that the network is accessible to everyone across the country, and not only the network, but meaningful network that allows them to access all these capabilities as well. So you've got to look at it through how do you become an enabler with what is currently out there in a knowledge hub, but also how do you actively participate by bringing in devices that lower the price of access, by making sure that there's connectivity also to access some of those knowledge bases.
Kayembe, I just quickly want to allude to that. I think we always talk about the triple challenges of either the entrepreneurship ecosystem or innovation ecosystem, which is access to finance, market access, and then capacity building. But I really want to say that the biggest one is actually access to information. Okay. So I think when we start leveling that or creating an equilibrium of everybody having access to information or privy to information, I think then we can start having a different conversation. But the question is just, how do we hold you guys a little bit accountable on that knowledge hub, right? I think it's a low-hanging fruit. I think it's something that can be done. It's really, I think this is something that can be spoken about. I don't think it takes a lot. We gather this information, we pull it together. I think these discussions is not just about us sharing information, it's also coming up with solutions, right? And sometimes I have to remove that hat. And I have 100 questions for you. The first thing that I wrote down was startup bundles, fintech startup bundles. And how do we do that, right? How do we access it? But I was like, Linda, you're not here in that capacity. Just relax. But yeah, Kayembe, not to put you on the hot seat, I think. But I think these are conversations that we should have. And this is why we network, right? It's not just a panel discussion. I think it's a brainstorming activity, right? It's the first time I meet you. And it's an opportunity. But yeah, anyway, over to Anton. So Anton, I think one thing that also came through when Kayembe was speaking was infrastructure, right? What is the biggest, and I'm off script, sorry. What is the biggest impediment to creating a digital economy for Namibia? What type of infrastructure do we need? And where do we start? From your expertise.
Yes. No, infrastructure, I think, like in the remote areas, we meet people who are young people, who are quite brilliant, but just because of that lack of access to information, not having that, and it's not any fault of their own, It's just you were born in a rural area. You have a brilliant mind, but all this capacity and all this talent goes to waste just because there is no access to internet, whether it be fast internet. Recently, we had this fight about Starlink, and you sometimes wonder if the regulator, and I'm gonna be shot for this, whether the regulator really understands that putting that barrier, and I'm sure there are good valid reasons why maybe they do not want such a technology there, but then they should also understand that that also disenfranchises certain people and doesn't democratize access to infrastructure. So that's one aspect. And I think the way that we can sort of get there is something that I think I've been seeing now with especially the municipality taking ownership of putting in fiber as part of the infrastructure of the streets. Because if you standardize that and say wherever we build a road, wherever we put a water pipe or electricity, we should put also fiber. Internet should be a basic need, like water and electricity, because it opens up a lot of people to a wider world beyond just their village or beyond their neighborhood. I'm a product of seeing things out there because I got interested in software development because I watched the YouTube video long ago. And I was so fascinated with how does that work? And I have benefited greatly for that. And I really want Namibians to experience that same passion that we have.
Thank you so much for that. And I just want to quickly hold on to you a little bit longer. What about data? Yes, we have the fiber, we have the infrastructure. What about the data? And without data, startups can't build solutions. The biggest problem we have is when a startup wants to build a solution, data is in silos. Data is not ours, it's still in paper. They can't access, we talk about APIs and all of these jargons, right? What about the data? Because we're talking about enabling an ecosystem. But data is that backbone. So yes, we have the fiber, we have everything. There's 4G, 5G, but what's flowing in between? What's that thing? Where are we getting it from? And how do we start? Because there's this thing of data is in silos. Data is not available. Data is expensive. Data is the next oil. Are we missing out on that oil?
So I think, I think it's a culture thing. So in Namibia, we have this thing of being so closed. So it's my company and I want to protect my data at all costs. At such events, there's always that comment, they'll steal your ideas.
So is it a mindset?
It's a mindset thing. It's a mindset thing because the problem in Namibia I've seen, we always innovate in silos. We don't collaborate. And I think sometimes when we look at the West or the developed world, we think that Apple, for example, develops the iPhone in isolation. But we do not know that there's a Samsung chip in that iPhone. It's a collaborative effort. But I don't know, we have that mentality where we innovate in silos. So when it comes to data, and this is something that gives me hope, is that we started to see like MTC and Paratus having data centers and allowing the normal individual to also have a share in that data center for an affordable price. And with Moore's law, and as processors get more, the cost of technology gets cheaper, I think then as time goes on and as we innovate and push the boundaries, then technology does become more accessible and becomes cheaper. And that's something we see. I mean, 20 years ago, having internet was reserved for big organizations. Now we carry it in our pockets, so that's something.
Thank you so much, Anton. So I think Vivette, now we go to that element of talent and skills, right? And your background is diverse. right? You wear many hats. But I think one that we want to hear about is that academia. What role does academia play in closing that gap, but also creating partnerships? Because we talk about IPs, and we now see that academia is actually taking your thesis paper and converting into a startup. Because when you go to the West, now you'll see that labs, science is the new technology. And that means someone's thesis paper is becoming a startup and making money, whether it be nanotechnology, whether it be gene modification, whatever the case may be. What role does academia play, and how far or how ahead or behind is Namibia when it comes to that part as academia?
Okay, thanks for the question, Linda. Just before I answer, with the question of Starlink, we are currently, so I have to, I'm sorry, because we just, Theo and I just came from a Data Protection Act stakeholder engagement. Our data sovereignty is at risk with Starlink, number one. Number two, it's not accessible to the guy in Okahawa because it's just too expensive. And on top of everything else, Starlink doesn't want to adhere to Namibian laws. So please, asseblief, I moet bly.
So just before we go with the Starlink thing, just a little bit closer to the mic, I was told.
Sorry, okay. No, it's good that maybe half the room didn't hear me bash Starlink. But the Data Protection Data Protection Act is being promulgated. There's lots of stakeholder engagements. Please engage. It's a very important conversation. So back to your question on academia. The internet started in an MIT lab. Right? Internet started in an MIT lab. So that in and itself answers the question about what role does academia play. We don't have the resources as startups to R&D, to a prototype, and academic centers are supposed to be where our startups can go to do that. So I won't speak for UNAM or IUM at this stage, but I will speak for NUST. Fab Lab, who knows Pebble? We should all be having Pebble computers. Pebble started in Fab Lab at NUST. Lefa started in Fab Lab at NUST. There's a couple... Yeni, Yeni started at a program that was funded by UNICEF, but that's another story. But Yeni's being incubated and I know a couple of people possibly in this room are being incubated at universities. So the universities play a critical role when it comes to the early stages, because what we were talking about in terms of understanding that about IP, understanding about the business plan, although business plans really, all of that, universities traditionally are supposed to cover that role. But now we do see people like Basecamp's UNAM-led program that started last night. I don't know if it's still open, but... So academia really plays or has traditionally played a role of not only being the R&D centers for those that can't afford it, but they're also the education role for those that can't afford it. Currently in Namibia, we were when I say we, I say NUST, we were well on our way to really Fab Lab, and then we had the Innovation Design Lab. We got a guy who was doing innovation for Mercedes to come in and start up the Innovation Design Lab. And it died a slow death during COVID, unfortunately. There was enemies of progress and there was a whole lot of things. So Fab Lab is still in existence, but it's being underutilized. It doesn't have enough funding or resources. It's not well known, and we need more Fab Labs. So we, for example, UNAM has centers, IUM has centers, NUST now eventually has a research campus in Luderitz, for example, where I am truly hoping that we are going to really innovate some good technologies, because one thing that people don't understand about the energy nexus that we are an energy nexus. There's not a form of energy we don't have. And if we're looking at green hydrogen in specific, green hydrogen is a new technology, which means there's huge amounts of growth and technologies that haven't been invented yet. And with the amount of power that the government has, I'm not sure about our new government, but they seem to be okay with it. But the amount of force that we have behind it means that we are in a prime position to innovate and to potentially break through technologies that can be patented and put around the world. And academia really needs to step up. I'm from NUST, so I'm calling my own organization out here. We need to step up and assist with creating more of those R&D centers because you are very right. People's theses get turned into money. And we here sit and people will write their thesis and they think it's for a mark. Even if you don't want to be a startup, it's your job interview. It's how you get, my expertise came because I said, listen, I know about open data because I wrote a thesis on open data. Here's what we need to know. So your thesis is your job interview. And I think you talked about mindset. We need to have a mindset. And when you go into academia and you go into studying in higher education, you need to look at it not just as I need to get this degree to get a job, but what can I do in getting the degree that will make me the expert to get the job? So, or to get the startup or etc. Thank you.
Vivette, thank you so much. I see Kayembe just wants to jump in. So I'm not gonna stop him.
I think, Vivette, you nailed it there. And I want to take a look from a different perspective, right? And if I follow my own story, I didn't finish my academia before starting into the corporate world, right? I finished my academic achievements after starting work. And from that position and being in a corporate environment for a very long time, we use a whole bunch of things when we build our decks and our business plans and all of these things. And even in the corporate environment, we don't have the level of acknowledgement to academia that we should. Because a lot of those stats, a lot of the research that we use comes from academia, but it's put into a very nice presentation that we present as a PwC report or an Old Mutual report. And I work for these companies, so I'm allowed to use those examples. And I think as startups, we should be looking at something similar. And again, because of having my postgrads after I started in the corporate world, I realized the value that there is in research papers. And colleagues and peers, please, I urge you to go look at some of those master's research papers and see that half of the work has actually been done for you when it comes to understanding your target market, understanding your industry, and understanding the technologies that could enable you within that space as well. And basically, there's Google Scholar. Go on to there, you can read reports from MIT, from Stanford, from Wits Business School, whichever it is that you want, you type in a topic and you get that paper as well. So yes, there's the technology and the IP creation part, but there's also leveraging the academia for information instead of you having to, thumb suck, this is what my client wants, or these are the technologies that we're using.
Speechless, eh? But I think from a Namibian perspective, and I think I'm going back to your keynote, right? We tend to always criticize ourselves a lot. And I think for the longest time, that's also what I did. I always just see what is wrong until you go outside of Namibia. And then you start realizing there's a lot going on in country. And I think for Namibia, and I want to come back to what is that unique value proposition for all of you? And I think this is more discussion, right? And I think I'll start with you, Nrupesh. What is Namibia's unique value proposition to say that can we position ourselves as the fintech hub of Southern Africa? We have the gateway. We spoke about the ports. We have a very good financial infrastructure. Can we serve B2B, government to government, other nations as the fintech hub of Africa? Do you think we are ready for that? And for you, it's more that cybersecurity element, but also just Can we
Yes.
start looking at the positive sides, what Namibia can actually contribute to closing the gap from a regional perspective and not so much from a local perspective?
Here is the harsh reality. Startups don't go from cities into towns. They go cities into other countries. They go national. But look at Lefa. All due respect to Melkis, I know him well. He's still in Windhoek only, not even in Swakop. Startups are refusing. When you start in Windhoek, Namibian startups refuse to go into towns. Look at how much effort Maris had to make to go into these places. They have the backing. Startups won't go there. The only way startups can go is from Namibia to maybe neighboring countries to grow bigger there. They refuse to grow big in our own country, which is the first big challenge. Secondly, the mindset. We're talking about startups, but what we need to be talking about is entrepreneurs in the smaller places, and then giving them the training to then come to Windhoek or bigger towns there to then have startup hubs and R&D centers there. But it goes hand in hand. We talk about startups, but then we don't talk about entrepreneurs. Somebody else talks about entrepreneurs, but then they leave the startup section out of it. And the reality is, any startup that comes in from Namibia, the aim should be to go into Southern Africa or grow, or position Namibia to bring startups from Finland, Estonia, other places who want to come into Africa. We're not trying to sell them Namibia. They want to grow bigger than Europe, which is the 1.4 billion people in Africa. That's what we need to sell and say, look, come to Namibia, we'll get you a step through the door. And that's where we position ourselves. But we're not doing that. We want to make an impact locally, but we still want to grow big regionally. And we need to choose what's the priority now. Do we have enough startups to actually scale up? If we don't, let's develop some more startups over the next few years, and then collectively looks at scaling up. Sorry, that was...
Kayembe, just maybe to build a little bit on that. Do you then think there's appetite for Namibia to host other fintechs outside of Namibia? Because he just said something very interesting. What if we bring people from Finland that maybe wants to expand from Namibia into the rest of Africa?
Good question. And I don't think it's an appetite conversation. I think it's more of a priority conversation, right? If you look at where we are as a country, there's a lot of things that prioritize over starting up a digital innovation capability. We know how some of our people can't afford to eat on a daily basis, hence the grants. We know what the agriculture sector's been through in the last few years. So there is a focus from government on what I believe are the right things, right? Let's make sure we take care of our people first before we look abroad. But in the same sense also, doing that could be a way of taking care of our people. And I think it links me into something that was mentioned. If you look at our resources and our land, right? There's sun, there's wind, there's sea, there's uranium, and there's oil and gas now. What are these drivers? They're all energy sector drivers. But yes, what do? Hosting centers. Have we had the conversation with AWS, with Azure? We've got the energy, we've got the space, right? These are some of the things that we need to start thinking about. How do we bring in other industries to leverage our space and to leverage our energy? And I think, the question is of do we want to start opening ourselves up? I think we have, right, as a country. But again, we've got industries which butter our bread, and we have to keep those going. And unfortunately, there is a tight fiscal budget when it comes to where we are as a country. And prioritizing some of those technologies actually means dropping some of the priorities that we've got now. So that's the catch-22 that we have in ourselves. But if the question was, can we? Most definitely.
Anton, you're in the bank, right?
Yes.
It's fintech. How does one adopt technology in such a highly regulated space and still be innovative? And especially because that's what you do on a day-to-day basis, right? It's providing a service from the back end of things. But the reality is you guys are highly regulated. but yet the word fin and tech is there. It's supposed to be your space. How do you maneuver in that? And what does the bank need to actually adopt and actually embrace this ever so growing fintech space that Namibia is seeing? We have a Virtual Asset Act. Are we embracing it fully from the bank? I also know that you guys are very much good in the green space, right? So all of these things, there's green financing. How does that look like from the bank side?
So one thing that I can say in the recent years that was a good success is that government, the regulators, and private sector and the banks started communicating, and communicating not from a top down, but we all sit at the table and we try to solve the problem together. Because previously, the model was we just listen to what the regulator says. They make the rules. Whether we complain, it doesn't matter. But I think now, due to the fintech space globally, and it has become very competitive, and we as a developing country are starting to see that we might lose out on these opportunities, because like Capricorn is a Namibian grown bank. I think we are the only one. So how do we also protect that so that we also grow and we can also expand to serve our neighbors? Like, for example, with the oil, a lot of investors are coming. So how do we leverage off that? Because if we also think of it from a fiscal perspective, we are a local company, so we pay the most tax. We develop locally as well. At Capricorn, our things are we code them, we make them. It's an NIPDB product, and I think if we don't when we work with the regulator and we also advise them that, look, this is on the horizon. For example, CBDCs with the digital currencies. These are the things that are happening in the fringe of fintech, because we are in tune with that. Don't you think that these may be other regulations that we can put through? And that harmony, I think, is promising. It's promising, and I think it has changed the way we do this. I like what our Minister of ICT said, that she wants to bring in a Google Pay, and that for me it's a sign of hope.
So I think, thank you so much, Anton. Yes. And then Vivette, I think we have so many entrepreneurs in the room and they want to access the fintech space. So this is going to be a little bit of a provocative, maybe, question. If MTC is taking up the fintech space and the banks are taking up the fintech space, what about the fintech startup on the ground that doesn't have the backing, that doesn't have the infrastructure, that doesn't have the finance? How do they enter the market, and do you think there's even room for them to maneuver in a space that is with all the big guns?
Thank you for that question, because so I'm going to use my favorite organization at the moment, the Namibia Agricultural Board. They have really great infancy protection for, I think, about 17 produce. I stand to be corrected on that number. Where's the infancy protection for our fintechs? Where's the infancy protection for any of our startups? I know, I hope somebody from City of Windhoek is not here. I'm about to call you guys out. City of Windhoek seems to be the enemy of progress for a lot of startups. Local government actually tends to play in the startup space because they So where is my thing is, you're absolutely correct. MTC have the backing, and it's a great service that they're bringing, but they are going to start edging out some other people. For example, Jabu are also looking to do a wallet. So now, how is Maris? I understand that there's different products, potentially, etc. So we need to start really looking at those things when it comes to our entrepreneurship space. We need to look at we've got data on where all the different entrepreneurs, or where the biggest, I think according to the agri-tech and is apparently the biggest entrepreneurship space. Great. They already have a lot of guys that are going to protect them on that, but our other guys don't. So we need to really start looking at that and looking at the role that government, whether national, regional, or local, are playing, where they're actually harming their own people. So, yeah, in a nutshell. And also with the data center question, do we want to attract AWS and all of those guys? Fantastic.